Hello, you're on the Reddit Reveals channel. Subject line. About last night. I can't stop thinking about it. No greeting. No name. Just those 8 words. And her reply. Stop. He might see this. I didn't mean to find it. I didn't even know her email was logged in on the living room tablet. She used it to play puzzles sometimes. Those stupid Match 3 games she said helped her unwind. I just wanted to order paper towels. Instead, I got punched in the throat by Helvetica font. My first instinct. Close it. Pretend I didn't see anything. That's my default setting. Ignore. Swallow. Apologize. But my thumb hovered. And then it tapped. And what I read made my chest go numb. My hands started shaking. I had to sit down on the floor. Not the couch. Not a chair. The floor. Like my knees gave out. Like my brain needed to be closer to the ground to process what my wife had written. She mentioned a hotel. Room 409. She mentioned a scar I didn't have. She mentioned whispering his name while I was asleep in the next room. You know how people say the room spins when you're shocked? No, it doesn't spin. It contracts. Like the air gets sucked into your ears, and your thoughts start flailing like fish in a bucket. She came home later that night, carrying groceries. She smiled. She asked if I wanted to help put things away. I said sure. I grabbed the eggs with hands I could barely control. I smiled back. I joked about her buying the off-brand cereal. We talked about dinner. She didn't know I had read the emails. Not yet. She laughed while slicing tomatoes. I stood there watching her, realizing she had made love to someone else, while I was home calculating whether we could afford new car tires this month. She tricked me. But what happened next, what happened the very next day, shattered her more than anything she ever did to me. And I didn't even raise my voice. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table or hurl her phone against the wall like some betrayed action movie husband. I just started watching her. Really watching. Every smile. Every pause. Every time she looked at her phone and tilted it just slightly away from me. The way her laughter lingered a little too long when she read texts. The way she started doing her makeup more carefully for solo grocery runs. None of it was innocent anymore. None of it was small. Every action she took felt like a piece of glass I was being forced to swallow. I couldn't sleep that night. Not because I was crying. I'd already done that in the bathroom earlier, dry heaving into a hand towel like some pathetic cliche. No, I couldn't sleep because I was planning. Not revenge. Not violence. Nothing that dramatic. I just wanted her to feel what I felt. Not rage. Not chaos. Just that quiet kind of suffocation. At 2:17 a.m. While she was sleeping, her back turned to me, arm draped lazily across a pillow, I logged into her email again. I read more. I wish I hadn't. There were photos. Some blurry. Some not. One of them made me drop the tablet on my lap like it had burned me. It was her. In our bathroom. Wearing my hoodie. But the way she posed, the way she captioned it. Still smells like him. But you'll ruin that soon, won't you? That hoodie was back in my closet. Hanging next to the shirt I wore on our anniversary. I deleted nothing. I replied to nothing. I just started forwarding the emails, every one of them, to a new address I created, truthformalo@outlook.com. That's me, by the way. Milo. I told you, not a flashy name. No one writes novels about guys named Milo. But it's mine. And that night, I made sure it was stamped across every ugly truth she ever typed. I didn't say anything the next morning either. I made her coffee, just like always. 2 sugars. Extra creamer. She kissed my cheek. Said she had errands. I told her to drive safe. She smiled like a woman who still thought I was blind. Like I was just her soft, safe backup plan. What she didn't know was that I'd already scheduled those emails to forward to her office address, the one she checked every weekday at 9 a.m. sharp. I knew she'd be in the office. I even watched the location ping on our shared calendar. Weekly strategy meeting. She read the first one at 9:02. I know because she called me at 9:04. She didn't even say hello. I answered the phone, and all I heard was her breathing, short, panicked, like someone was pushing her underwater. Milo, she whispered. Just that. My name. Like she'd forgotten how to speak. I didn't answer. I just let the silence wrap around her. Let her sit in the realization. The next words out of her mouth weren't what I expected. She didn't deny it. She didn't scream. She said, quietly, broken, please, don't leave me. But that was the thing. She already had. And the worst part? I was still there. She came home 2 hours later. She wasn't supposed to. Tuesdays, she always stayed late. Client reporting day, she said. But not today. Today, she walked through the door at 11:16 a.m. Her blouse wrinkled, her purse half-zipped, her eyes already red like she'd been clawing at her soul the entire drive home. I was in the kitchen, wiping down the counter. Calm. Focused. Like I hadn't detonated her world just hours before. She stood there, frozen in the doorway, holding her car keys like a weapon she wasn't sure how to use. She started. I didn't look up. The trash goes out today. You forgot again. That broke her. Her voice cracked. Milo, please. Just look at me. I did. Slowly. The moment our eyes met, she looked away, like the weight of her own guilt was a spotlight she couldn't bear. She reached for my hand. I flinched. She stopped. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out. Just shallow breath and the kind of panic you usually only see in crime scenes and car wrecks. She kept saying things like, it didn't mean anything, and I was stupid, and my personal favorite. It was just a moment, Milo. A moment? I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream in her face and ask if a moment is what made her send selfies from the back seat of another man's car. If a moment is what made her leave her wedding ring on our dresser while she booked hotel rooms under her maiden name. Instead, I asked one question. How long? She hesitated. That was her first mistake. Then she said, 3 weeks. That was her second. Because I already knew the truth. 2 months. I had the email receipts, the dates, the damn time-stamped photos. I watched her crumble right there in front of the dishwasher. She slumped to the floor like gravity had tripled just for her. I stood still, towel in hand, watching my wife fall apart on the same tile floor where we once danced barefoot after painting the kitchen at 2 a.m. I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't relishing the control or feeding off her collapse. I was just numb. Like all my anger had evaporated and left behind this hollow, echoing silence. She begged me not to leave her. She said she would quit her job, go to therapy, block him, change her number. She said she'd delete social media, that she'd sleep on the couch, that she'd do anything, everything, if I just didn't give up on us. I nodded, quietly, slowly. Then I walked over and sat down beside her on the floor. She leaned toward me, like that meant forgiveness. I whispered, you don't get to decide when the pain ends. Then I stood up and walked out the front door. Not with a suitcase, not with keys. Just out. I didn't tell her where I was going. I wasn't sure myself. But I knew this. She'd regret this forever. And I hadn't even touched the worst part yet. I didn't go far. Not physically, anyway. But mentally. I might as well have been on another planet. There's this guy from my book club, a quiet type named Glenn. Retired postman. Big into World War II fiction. We've maybe exchanged 10 words in 6 months. But he once offered me his spare room when I mentioned our upstairs AC had broken. I remembered that. That, and the way he always poured his coffee before the meeting started, like he hated small talk as much as I did. So that's where I went. I showed up at his door looking like a man who'd survived an explosion and hadn't yet realized he was missing pieces. He didn't ask questions, just nodded once, stepped aside, and pointed toward the upstairs hall. The room was clean, small, smelled like cedar and quiet. I didn't bring clothes. I didn't bring a toothbrush. I didn't even bring my phone charger. All I had were the keys in my pocket, a half-charged battery, and the image of my wife crying on the kitchen floor. She called 10 times the first night, texted paragraphs. I didn't respond. I laid in that unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it rotated slowly, like a clock that no longer cared about time. I thought about the little things. Her playlists. The way she hated mushrooms, but pretended to like them because my mom put them in everything. How she used to say, your silence is the loudest thing in the room, when I got upset and didn't speak. Well, she was hearing it now. And this time, I wasn't planning to break it. The next morning, Glenn made oatmeal. I didn't touch it. I just sat at his table while he read the paper and didn't pry. The quiet felt heavier than her screams ever could have. Around noon, I opened my email and saw another message from her. This one titled, "Please let me explain what happened that night." But I didn't care about that night anymore. I cared about why it happened. I cared about what else she'd hidden. I cared about how easily she seemed to switch gears, one moment whispering someone else's name, the next asking me to pass the salt like nothing had changed. That's what really broke me. Not the cheating, the normalcy. She had lived in both realities, the wife and the liar, and somehow made both look believable. I stayed at Glenn's for 4 more days. She didn't stop writing. Each email more desperate, less composed, spelling mistakes, one-word subjects, attachments I never opened. On the fifth day, she stopped reaching out. That's when I knew she was spiraling. Not because she'd lost me, but because she didn't know how to fix it. Because she couldn't control it anymore. Because, for once, I was the one disappearing. When I finally walked back into the house, everything was spotless. The trash was out, laundry folded, groceries stacked like a showroom display. She was sitting on the couch, still in her work blouse, staring at the door like a widow waiting for news. I didn't say anything. I walked past her, into our bedroom, our marriage battlefield, and sat on the bed. She followed, sat across from me. Her lips trembled, but her eyes stayed locked on mine. "Milo," she whispered, "I haven't eaten since you left." I stared at her for a long time. Then I said, "Good." Her face cracked. That's when she knew. This wasn't going to be about forgiveness. Not anymore. Now it was about survival. And I was finally choosing myself. After I told her good, she didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just sat there, like a puppet with her strings cut. I could see the calculation behind her eyes. She was trying to figure out which version of herself to become next. The remorseful wife? The victim of her own impulse? The girl who made one mistake and deserved a second chance? None of them fit anymore. I showered. She followed me down the hallway like a ghost. I heard her sit outside the bathroom door. Not knocking, just sitting, breathing, listening. When I stepped out in a towel, she looked up at me like I was some soldier returning from war, only to find his home had been bombed. I walked right past her. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I just couldn't stomach pretending that what she did was a momentary lapse. It wasn't. It was a strategy. An entire secret life built on silence, little lies, and a smile that looked just believable enough to keep me from asking more questions. She started cooking again, leaving little post-it notes on the fridge. "Got your favorite cereal." The plumber fixed the sink. "Thinking about therapy, can we talk?" But that was the problem. I didn't want her to fix things. I wanted her to feel how broken they were. I wanted her to understand that she hadn't just destroyed a relationship, she'd shattered me. The version of me that believed in her, that believed in us. She started sleeping on the couch. Not because I told her to, but because I stopped turning toward her in bed. I didn't speak unless I had to. She became a shadow moving through the house, quiet, soft-footed, constantly peeking around corners to see if I was still angry. But I wasn't angry. I was something worse. I was indifferent. 3 days after I came home, I woke up and she was gone. No note. No text. Her car missing from the driveway. I sat at the kitchen table, eating cereal she had bought, wondering if she'd finally left for good. I felt nothing, until I opened my laptop. There, sitting in the inbox of the dummy email I had used to forward her affair messages, was a new message from him. The other man. Wes. Subject line. "I think you should know what she told me." I hesitated. My stomach tightened, but my hand moved on its own. I clicked. The email was short. Too short. Just one paragraph. But it rebroke something inside me that had only just begun to scar over. She said you were controlling, distant, that she felt like a prisoner in your house. She told me you made her feel invisible, that you never wanted kids. She said she'd been trying to leave you for over a year, but she was scared of how you'd react. I blinked. Read it again. And again. I wasn't angry at her for sleeping with him. I was angry she rewrote our history to justify it. Me? Controlling? I was the guy who begged her to talk about things when she shut down. The one who planned surprise weekends just to get her away from her phone. The one who turned down a better job offer because she didn't want to move. And kids? I was the one who brought it up first. She said we should wait. I waited. I was always waiting. And now, she was crafting a version of me that would make people understand why she cheated. That would make him feel like the good guy in her twisted story. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about erasure. She wasn't just rewriting her actions. She was rewriting me. And I wasn't about to let her publish that story. Not without the truth. She came to me one morning holding 2 mugs of coffee like we hadn't been walking on glass for weeks. She was wearing that oversized university hoodie she always stole from me when she wanted to look soft, harmless, familiar. Her voice was almost a whisper, like she didn't want to scare the silence away. "I was thinking," she said carefully, "maybe we could have people over again. Just dinner. Something normal." Normal. That word used to mean comfort. Now it sounded like anesthesia. like she wanted to numb the space between us with small talk and wine glasses clinking against ceramic plates. Still, I agreed. I told her to go ahead and plan it. I even suggested the guest list. What she didn't know was that everyone she wanted to invite, the two couples we'd gone hiking with last fall, her best friend from work and her husband, the woman from yoga she confided in, had already seen the screenshots. I sent them the emails. All of them. No captions. No commentary. Just the cold, black and white evidence. Some of them responded. Some didn't. But I know they read them. You can tell when someone's voice changes just a little on the phone, or when their texts suddenly shrink to a single word. The night of the dinner, she lit candles, cooked, played that lo-fi playlist she always used to put on during storms. I watched her move around the kitchen, performing, pretending, trying to choreograph her way back into grace. She even wore her hair the way I used to love it, half-pinned, like a secret just starting to fall loose. By the time our guests arrived, she was glowing. Fake glowing, but glowing all the same. She laughed too loud at the door, hugged too tightly. She was painting over the cracks in the walls while pretending we were just an ordinary couple, hosting an ordinary dinner. We sat. We ate. We talked about stupid things, vacation plans, a new TV show, how early it was getting dark now. She was in her element, storytelling and laughing like a woman who had nothing to hide. And then I said, calmly, I think we should talk about the affair. Silence dropped like a guillotine. Forks froze halfway to mouths. One of the women, Elise, I think, shifted uncomfortably and stared at her plate like she might be sick. Lauren blinked, smile twitching. Milo, don't. I looked at her, steady. Why not? You told Wes you'd been trying to leave me for a year. That I was cold. Controlling. That I never wanted kids. Maybe our friends should hear about that too. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. No one said a word. I stood up and walked to the bookshelf. Took down a small folder I had tucked between two novels. I placed it on the table and flipped it open. Printouts. Dozens of them. Emails. Photos. Timestamps. Texts. Her hand flew to her mouth. The blood drained from her face like someone had unplugged her. She looked at our guests, pleading silently, eyes darting, desperate for someone to come to her defense. No one did. I'm not showing you this to shame her, I said quietly, never raising my voice. I'm showing you because she's been rewriting the truth. And I need you to know, I was never the man she told him I was. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward. Her breathing was ragged now, like she was choking on her own name. She whispered, You planned this? I looked at her and nodded once. I planned this. She left the room, rushed down the hallway, slammed the bedroom door. Our guests sat frozen for another full minute. Then one by one, they left. No one asked me to explain further. I didn't need to. The truth had already done the work. That night, she didn't sleep on the couch. She didn't sleep at all. I could hear her crying through the wall. And for the first time since I found out, I slept like a baby. The next morning was eerily quiet. She didn't speak. She didn't look at me. Just moved around the house like a ghost in shock, arms stiff, eyes glassy. For a moment, I thought it might be over. Not the marriage that had died weeks ago, but the game. The power play. I thought she'd finally let the guilt swallow her whole and leave me alone in the wreckage she'd created. But I was wrong. So wrong. At 9:14 a.m., I got a text from Elise, the woman from last night's dinner, the one who'd barely touched her food after I laid it all out. Her message was just a link and 3 words. You need this. It was a Facebook post. Public. Posted 37 minutes ago by Lauren Masters, with a polished black and white photo of us smiling at a New Year's party 2 years ago, her head leaning against mine, my hand on her waist. The caption stopped my heart cold. Marriage is messy. Humans make mistakes. But emotional abuse hides in silence. I was never allowed to have friends. I was tracked. Controlled. When I broke, just once, I did so out of desperation. And now the man who broke me wants to parade my shame as entertainment. I won't let him. I am reclaiming my voice. I read it 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, but because I couldn't believe it. She was rewriting everything again, recasting herself not just as the one who was hurt, but the only one. The comments were already piling up. Support. Sympathy. Friends of hers from college I barely remembered liking the post and saying things like stay strong, babe, and we love you, and no one's perfect, but you don't deserve this. The most surreal part? Some of my friends had liked it too. People who sat at our table, who toasted us at our wedding, who knew me, or at least I thought they did. I didn't respond. Not right away. I just sat there at the kitchen table, scrolling through the comments while the woman who detonated my life stood in the next room brushing her hair like nothing had happened. I heard her footsteps in the hallway, the jingle of her keys. I didn't move. As she passed behind me, she paused. I felt her breath near my shoulder. She whispered, "You weren't supposed to push me this far." I turned slowly and looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see my wife. I saw a strategist, a survivor, a woman who had made a terrible mistake, and instead of owning it, had decided to burn the whole house down just to crawl out from under the ashes without blame. She left. I didn't follow. I stayed there in my own kitchen, in my own house, and realized something terrifying. She was winning. Even after everything I showed, everything I exposed, she was still the victim in the eyes of the world. I thought the truth was enough. But the truth doesn't trend. The truth doesn't get sympathy clicks. The truth doesn't get shared by mutual friends who only read the first 3 lines. By the time I shut my laptop, over 600 people had shared her post. She wasn't hiding anymore. She had turned the whole thing into a performance. And I was no longer the husband she betrayed. I was the villain in the story she had already published. After that post went viral, I spent 3 straight days reading, refreshing, watching my name dissolve into something I didn't recognize. I wasn't Milo anymore. I was the cold husband, the silent manipulator, the guy who embarrassed his wife publicly after she made one mistake. No one asked for my side. They didn't care about the emails, the timestamps, the lies. They saw a well-lit photo, a few poetic words, and decided she was the wounded bird worth saving. I almost fought back. I wrote a long post, a detailed, heart-wrenching explanation, full of screenshots, metadata, hard truths. I even had Glenn, the quiet old man who let me sleep under his roof when I had nowhere else, read it for clarity. He looked up at me and said, "You could post this, sure. But then what? Win what? Prove what? To who?" And I didn't have an answer, because he was right. The battle was never really with her. It was with the part of me that still needed everyone else to believe I didn't deserve what happened. That if enough strangers agreed with me, I'd stop feeling hollow. But that was never going to happen. So I deleted the post, blocked her on everything, and I started over. I filed for divorce quietly. No mess. No drama. She didn't contest it. Probably because by then she had already moved on to building her healing brand. A little blog, some podcast appearances, a carefully curated image of resilience. I didn't follow it. I didn't check in. I let her build whatever version of reality she needed to survive. I just didn't want to live in it anymore. I moved to a smaller place. A little house with creaky floors and a lemon tree in the yard. It's quiet, peaceful. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I joined a local hiking group. I read books with no one sighing next to me for taking up too much shelf space. I even adopted a dog, a clumsy old rescue mutt with a lopsided ear and zero coordination. I named him Echo, because he listens. Always. Sometimes, on lonely nights, I still think about her. Not in anger, just reflection. Like looking at an old scar and remembering how it felt to get cut. But it doesn't sting anymore. She'll never apologize. Not truly. Not in the way I once begged for in my head. And that's okay. Because closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you decide to create yourself. I lost a wife, but I found myself. And for the first time in a very long time, I feel like that's enough.